FIFA VR Legacy of Shadow has launched as one of 2025's biggest VR IPs. But how well does it adapt that classic stealth formula to VR? Stick around and you'll find out. So FIFA VR Legacy of Shadow has been developed by Maze Theory, which is a UK studio that's got quite some calibre in VR. They did the Doctor Who titles, for anyone that's considering looking beyond this game, and they also did the Peaky Blinders experience in VR. And the game has been published by Vertigo Games, who are obviously famous for the likes of Arizona Sunshine. So there's quite a lot of power behind this, not to mention, obviously, Eidos Montreal are responsible for the Thief series in its current form. So you would imagine that with all of these names, all of these big studios back in this title, it's going to be something new, something groundbreaking in VR. But that's not really the case. The game is good. I'm going to put that straight up, right out now. The game is good. However, it's looking backwards a lot more than it is looking forwards. So you're cast as a character called Magpie, who is basically a lowly thief in the city, and you're being given missions to go and get certain items for your handler. It's all pretty standard fare story until things take a very sudden twist. The story in the game is delivered quite well, but there is a lot of events that happen with actually quite a little build-up. There's not much time that's been spent on the story to develop into these big moments. Instead, they kind of come at you with very little warning. But that's fine, because, you know, we're not really here for the story, we're here for the stealth gameplay. And Thief VR, Legacy of Shadow, does a really good job of adapting the classic Thief series into VR. Warts and all. So the game is structured in a series of missions. It's not an open world city by any regard. It is a structured linear experience, and it harks back a lot to the earliest of Thief games. Completely ignoring the 2014 kind of reboot that a lot of people dislike. So that's probably a good thing, right? Instead, the game takes its inspiration from the earliest of Thief titles. You have a mission which is set in a very specific area, and you must basically be dropped into this environment and reach from point A to point B however you see fit. Unfortunately, that however you see fit is very, very limited at the start of the game. You might find the occasional little bit offbeat, like finding a chest hidden somewhere or some extra arrows and so on, but by and large, the routes that you'll find are very, very linear and aren't that open to interpretation. Instead, you'll have to be watching guards as they go about their routes and their duties and making sure that you're remaining hidden and taking the guards out when it is appropriate to do so. There is a award system at the end of each mission that determines how well you performed for things like whether you killed the guards or if you knocked everyone out and so on. So there is a bit of replayability there. But what we have basically is I'm going through the level and I've been told that I need to get through a window high up there. And so I'm just following a linear path to get there, taking out guards one by one as they come towards me, climbing over walls and so on, remaining hidden. And later in the game, the levels do open up and give you multiple paths that you can take, but it is still A to B the entire way through. I don't think at any point I experienced this true sensation, true feeling that I am here in this city and I can carve my own route to get to the exit. Taking into account the recently launched Titan Isles, now you can see our review of this game at the top, but Titan Isles is a similar kind of concept. You're at point A and you need to get to point B. However, the freedom you get to choose that route feels much, much greater in Titan Isles than it does here in Thief VR Legacy of Shadow. Of course, you'll be engaging in all the typical stealth things, knocking out guards and pickpocketing them, stealing objects in order to earn great rewards, greater money, and bonus rewards. As I say, creeping around and finding little offshoots from the levels that may contain extra items for you to take. It's pretty standard fare. And what is here is really well done. There is no point at which you feel that things were unfair or that you weren't enjoying the exploration. It's just that it's on a really small scale. The freedom that you have to interpret the gameplay that is laid out in front of you is far lesser than you might experience from a modern VR stealth game. And this level design kind of gets hampered back later in the game. I'm not one to put spoilers out there. You can probably tell from watching this video that the footage that you're seeing is only from the first couple of levels because we don't want to put any spoilers out there. But later in the game, it basically recycles a lot of earlier level design. You are basically like maybe the final quarter of the game, you're simply retreading old ground. Some people might say that's because, you know, the development timeline didn't allow them to fully develop those levels or whatever it may be. But essentially, if you were to say this is an 8-hour game, 2 hours of it are retreading familiar ground. Some people might enjoy that. There are new routes and so on. Other people might think it's lazy. The combat in the game is pretty basic. You have a club right from the start of the game, a small club, and you must deflect enemies' attacks towards you and then knock them out. You can generally take 3 strikes before you go down, and that continues throughout a level. So if you're hit by a guard at the start, and then another guard twice later on, you're restarting through checkpoints. But the checkpoints are quite generous. You're never going to feel like you have to redo a whole level or 20 minutes, 30 minutes of gameplay, because generally checkpoints are registered every couple of minutes. When you are given the small amount of opportunity to experiment, you're not punished for doing so. And obviously, the bow is the big part of the game in terms of its combat. You have multiple arrows you can choose from, such as fire and water and rope arrows, and they all have different effects. Water arrows can put out fires, which means there's less light in an environment. Rope arrows allow you to connect to very specific objects and create new paths and routes, and this is often tied to finding secret items, which are bonus missions that are offered in the game. So there is a decent amount of variety in what's available to you to use. It's just it's not really ever explored. It is simply, you have these items to use, here's a very obvious place to use them, go ahead and use it. Which is a shame, because Thief VR Legacy of Shadow has all the fundamentals that you would want from a Thief game, but it seems to have ignored all of the progression that the genre has made for like the last 25 odd years, since those very early Thief games.
Smells dusty.
Predictable. Impossible. Blocked.
As such, Thief VR Legacy of Shadow stands as a great adaptation of the early Thief games, and it's a pretty good stealth action game in VR. However, it's not pushing the genre forward. It is adapting 25-year-old gameplay to work in VR and does that very well, but it doesn't modernise the formula at all. The VR release schedule for 2026 is kicking into gear, and coming soon is Katana Red Flowers. And this game is one of the most highly anticipated VR games of the year, and it's coming in January. But can it live up to the hype? Stick around and you'll find out. So Katana Red Flowers has been billed as a fast-paced, intense action game. But that's not the whole truth. There is actually 2 very separate parts to the game, and it's a weird combination. Now, let's start with the part of the game that everyone knows, the katana-based combat action experience. Now, this part of the game has you running through linear levels at a very fast pace, and performing all kinds of different parkour moves and engaging in combat with enemies. And the agenda here is to get from A to B in as quick a time as possible. It's very Mirror's Edge, or similar to the recently launched Reach, which you can see up here, but much more fast-paced. It is for want of a better term, a high-octane experience. It's supposed to challenge your dexterity and the physicality of the game. You'll be swinging your arms up and down to run. You'll have to maneuver with your sword and balance combat with movement. It's a game that does want to challenge you in terms of your input into the levels in order to obtain the best speed. And that is ultimately what you're going for in these gameplay sections. It is a speed run game. You're not going to be going off the beaten track and exploring the world and so on, although there are some like hidden corners that you can delve into. Instead, it is a case of kill all the enemies, make your way to the exit, move on to the next one. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. However, on the other side, we have the restaurant part of the game. And this is odd, to say the least. In the restaurant part of the game, which is the hub world for the game, you are managing a restaurant and having customers come to you and cooking their meals and serving their drinks and so on in order to progress your grandfather's restaurant and upscale it, earn more money and unlock new features and so on. And it's odd. It's a really odd combination of very different gameplay styles. You've got the fast-paced, high adrenaline, challenging combat, and then the really slow-paced cooking experience. Now, this is obviously the intention. The game has been designed specifically so that these two gameplay modes merge and impact one another. It's not a simple case of two games that are being shoved into one box. You can unlock upgrades for your runs through improving your restaurant, new weapons and so on. And before you start performing these runs, the way you unlock new ones is by using a counter that's in the hub world where your restaurant is to move about a token and choose which run to engage with. The two modes are inseparably linked, and it's, again, just a really strange combination, but it does a really good job. The levels are so challenging and so physically demanding that you'll do 4 or 5 of them, say, each lasting a few minutes, and then you'll come back to the restaurant and you'll casually cool down and try and earn some money and upgrade your restaurant, thus earning money and buying new items to use in your action runs. It's a cycle that works really well. The full gameplay loop isn't just about one part or the other, it is about both and the combination thereof. Now, unfortunately, Katana Red Flowers makes it a really hard job to understand what's going on in both of these modes. There is a tutorial system in both, but neither one is fully fleshed out. It seems like the developers kind of forgot a few bits when they were making their tutorial, their opening sections of the game. And I'm sure this will be fixed as soon as they watch this review and many others that point out the same things. So don't worry too much about this, but I do need to point out, in the early tutorial, the first tutorial you're given is a simple run through a level, the action part of the game. And it starts by telling you that you can duck by physically ducking or clicking the right stick, and you can swipe your sword and everything that you would expect to know. But then it throws out things like that actually you can also use a grappling hook. But it doesn't actually tell you what the input command for the grappling hook is. And it doesn't tell you this in the menu either. It just says, use your grappling hook. So you'll be fiddling around, pressing a lot of buttons, trying to figure out how to use it. It does show you the gesture, holding your hand up, or rather your paw, because you're obviously playing as a cat here. But it doesn't tell you which button you need to press in combination with that gesture to launch your grappling hook. And there are several elements of the game that are hidden in this way. They're not impenetrable, you will just be fiddling around a little bit to find the answer. For another example with the action elements is that you can run through a level and kill all the bad guys, or most of them, and get to the end of the level, but then the next level won't be available to you. And it never tells you what you need to do in order to complete this level and access the next one. You have to go back through the level or even restart it in order to figure it out for yourself. As far as the restaurant element goes, I found it a real struggle to find out exactly what temperature I should be cooking the food to. The icons that come on the characters that are asking, the NPCs that are asking for their food, are very basic. They don't tell you any, for example, if you're cooking steak, they don't tell you if they want it rare or well done, it's just steak. And in order to cook the food, you grab the meat from a shelf and you put it on a hot plate, you heat up the hot plate, and then the food cooks. And there's a meter above the food showing you how well done it's becoming, with a different amount of hearts, and each heart is increasing in colour, in redness, until black, and black is burnt, okay? So I was aiming for the bright red heart, which is the one that you would assume means this is good. But I was getting less points when I was achieving that than when I was undercooking, very obviously undercooking the food. So I'm not really quite sure what I was supposed to be aiming for here. Of course, ultimately it doesn't matter, because I was still serving the customers and still making money, but probably not as much as I could have been. So maybe a little explanation as to where I'm supposed to be stopping on this scale, rather than just get it right on the scale, might have been handy. Now, as you progress through the game and you are achieving these two things through sheer brute force of figuring it out, as you're completing the speed runs levels and you're completing, well, serving more dishes in your restaurant, you unlock reputation and coins, and the reputation and the coins are used then to upgrade. Reputation benefits your restaurant, and the coins can be spent on both the restaurant and new items for your speedrunning, for your action sequences. So the two, as I say, they are linked. It's not just a case of we've got two very separate games. But in that, people will most definitely find which of the two elements they prefer. Some people will spend time in that restaurant mode and then do the occasional speedrun when they feel like it. Other people will be here for the action and will be using the restaurant when they feel like they want to get a new sword or an upgrade of some kind. And that's great. That's what we want to see. We want to see people who are trying these two different modes out, figuring out which is their favourite, and then, of course, let us know which in the comments down below. So Katana Red Flowers, as I say, was one of the most anticipated games of 2026, and it has been delivered in a very well-rounded package. There are some minor issues, as I say, with the delivery of the content, specifically how you do certain things and sometimes how you progress through the levels. But as long as you can overcome this, or wait for the developers to fix it, which I'm sure they will very soon, then Katana Red Flowers is most definitely a great way to start the new release schedule for 2026. Have you ever wondered what it's like to run your own shop and build a retail empire? Well, now you can experience that for yourself in VR. Sort of. Shop and Stuff is available now on MetaQuest and coming soon to PSVR 2. And today, we're going to try it out and see if it's worth your time. Now, it'd be quite easy to confuse Shop and Stuff with a game like Shopping Crafts Magic Goods, of which you can see our review up the top. A kind of time management game, like Burger Time on a mobile device, where you've got customers coming to the counter and you have to assort certain items to give them the product they want. But it's not actually that at all. What Shop and Stuff is a comedic simulation of actually working in a store. Think Job Simulator, but not quite as abstract. What you do in the game is you'll have store shelves that you need to restock with goods, ordering them via a machine in the corner, serving customers, helping them out, cleaning the toilet, all that kind of stuff. And it takes place on a rotating day system. So you open the store in the morning, serve all your customers, takes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to do so. Off they exit, you close the shop, and you take your reward. And that reward is money. And that money can then be spent to upgrade your store, buy new stock, and so on. And it's a really simple system, but it's relatively engaging. However, what Shop and Stuff does, in between those moments, is allows you to wreak chaos. And this is where a large part of the appeal for Shop and Stuff is going to come in for the demographic that the game is clearly aiming at. So in Shop and Stuff, you have a lot of alternative gameplay elements. You can simply slap people coming into your shop, or you can pick up a fly swatter and swat them, or you can get a flamethrower and burn them, or you can throw them into the traffic and watch them get propelled far into the sky, into the desert that your shop seems to be located in. There's a lot of emerging gameplay that revolves around being silly. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when being silly, being stupid, or even a little bit crazy and violent doesn't take anything away from your progress through the main campaign. You'll still be able to upgrade and move on and expand your store and so on, regardless of how many people that you slap with a fly swatter. The only difference is, on that day, obviously, you're going to earn less money because a lot of your customers aren't going to actually buy the goods that they came in for. So the game throws out this really interesting balance between I'm going to progress and unlock more stuff, and I'm going to be quite chaotic right now. And obviously, as you progress further, you unlock more stuff to cause more chaos. Now, in this video, as always, we're only going to show the first couple of levels, so you're going to get a taste of what's in the game, because we don't want any spoilers. But essentially, every couple of days that you progress and earn money and unlock new things for your store, you're going to find a new way to torment your customers. And with that, it's pretty easy to see that Shop and Stuff is aiming for a pre-teen audience. If you've got 9 to 12-year-olds in your house that have just got a MetaQuest for Christmas, and while we're not necessarily advocating for children that young spending a lot of time in a VR headset with a screen so close to their eyes, if you are going to allow them to do so, this is a game that's perfectly suited to that kind of audience. You'll find things like, at the moment especially, in the bathroom there'll be poos with Santa hats on, and which you can pick up and throw around. You can whack plungers into people and get them stuck to it and then lift them up. And it's comedic. And the violence that is here, I mean, it's not even Tom and Jerry level violence. It is a cartoon aesthetic where you can go crazy and there are no consequences, which is exactly what appeals to that kind of age group. Now, Shop and Stuff isn't alone. There are other and Stuff games that have come from the same developer, Hyper VR. They also have Pets and Stuff and Shave and Stuff, which are following similar lines. Different kind of gameplay elements, but the same kind of you can follow the path or go crazy. And the studio has obviously found their own niche with this because all of these titles, by all reports we've seen, are performing very well on the MetaQuest store. And in that, they have continuously updated these games post-launch. Shop and Stuff launched on MetaQuest in December 2025, last month if you're watching this at the time of publication, and it's coming to PSVR 2 soon. And since then, it's already had a major update which has added a boss. Now the boss, it's not a boss as in like an end-of-level boss, it's a boss as in the guy who actually owns the store. And he is there to ease the onboarding. Previously, from what I can tell, the game was kind of, here you are, here's your store, figure it out. Whereas now, the boss will give you a few gentle commands at the start, basically showing you the ropes. Takes only a couple of minutes until you're set free. And then every so often, come along with another prompt when something, not minor things, but big new additions are added. And again, it's a really simple system that is clearly designed for gamers that maybe don't have quite as much attention span or aren't as experienced as gamers like me that have been playing games for a long time and have done a lot of VR. Instead, Shop and Stuff is actually a really high quality product designed for people who maybe, don't want to play Elden Ring or don't want to play the recent Breath of the Wild in VR mod on PC VR. Instead, they want to come in and have a good time and go a bit crazy, but also have some kind of structure to show that they're progressing and feel that they are achieving, and then turn it off and forget about it. Maybe have a laugh about it at school the next day with their friends. And for that, Shop and Stuff is perfect. There's no arguments here about the fact that it is a quality product for that audience. Now, you're not going to get lost in the game for hours on end. There's not enough depth here, even when you progress into the later levels, to keep you absorbed or keep you coming back for more if you're a seasoned gamer. Even the likes of Job Simulator struggled after, half a dozen hours going into it. And Shop and Stuff has got the same limitations. But again, we're not talking about experienced gamers. We're not talking about people like myself. We're talking about a different demographic, a kind of audience that wants short, sharp, thoroughly enjoyable, and brainless, essentially, gameplay. And Shop and Stuff brings that, and it brings it really well. Given that the game has had a significant update already in less than a month since it launched, we can expect more to come. The game is technically an early access game. And as I say, Hyper VR, the development studio behind the game, has supported their other titles, Pets and Stuff and Shave and Stuff, significantly since launch. So while Shop and Stuff has a premium price tag, it's not going to be left here. There's going to be more content coming over and over again. So it's quite admirable for Hyper VR to try and stick with that premium pricing model rather than going free to play for an audience that arguably is more attuned to free to play games, but instead continually feed that community, continually deliver fresh new content to that audience, and maintain their role as a developer of premium VR experiences. So while I'm not going to say that Shop and Stuff is going to appeal to the vast majority of people that are watching this video and are subscribing to 131XR, I'm pretty certain that a lot of you will know someone that this game is good for. And as such, given its low entry price tag, if you're looking to get a sibling or even your own child into VR and give them a try, maybe just a little 15-minute taster session, Shop and Stuff is perfect for that. There's no arguments here that this is a quality product for that audience. And also, compliments to Hyper VR for delivering exactly what that audience is going to want to try in VR. Puzzles of the World has launched as one of the first titles to arrive on MetaQuest in 2026. It's an interesting game, and what's there is good. But even as an early access game, it's got a long way to go. Stick around and you'll find out exactly what's going on with this game. Puzzles of the World is, as the title suggests, a puzzle game. It's a game which is kind of like a virtual recreation of building models in your own living room. The kind of models that are like made out of sheets of MDF wood, the really thin pieces. You know the kind I'm talking about. They sell them in a lot of like modeling and toy shops. And they're more aimed at adults than they are children. Although the game is perfectly suitable for kids, the model kits that you'll be using typically are sold to adults. And so I can't really see this appealing to kids very much. This is more a relaxing kind of game, a game that you take your time with, a game that you enjoy the process more than the rewards that you get for doing so. It's an early access game, and so the content is thin. And by that, I mean extremely thin. At present, there are only 2 puzzles in the game. There's a Japan-themed one and a Venice-themed one. And the timing for which they suggest that these puzzles will take is way off in my mind. The Japan-themed puzzle is supposed to take 45 minutes, whereas the Venice puzzle is supposed to take 20. And when I was playing this game, I completed both within that 20-minute allotment. Now, I do a bit of puzzling in my spare time. I have that kind of process in my mind, so maybe I'm just more efficient than the average user. But don't come on board on day one, right now, and expecting a long investment. That's not to say there's not going to be more content coming. I'm sure there is. I'm 100% positive. There will be dozens more puzzles added to the game as time goes on. But right now, with just 2 available, I mean, if it takes you an hour to complete the package, you've really been taking your time. But still, completing those puzzles, the process of making these virtual models is thoroughly enjoyable. The game sets everything out very cleanly. You have a table in front of you with a certain amount of pieces resting on, depending on what stage of the puzzle you're at. You have the manual, which you can move around freely, and you have a music center, and you can stop background music or sound effects and whatever else through this. And you can move all these things around wherever you want. The entire game is hand tracking. There is no use of controllers whatsoever in this game. In fact, when I started the game with my controllers active rather than my hands, rather than the hand tracking, the game couldn't then register that I was switching to hand tracking. I had to quit out to the dashboard, activate the hand tracking, and then go back in. There are a few other technical flaws that we'll get to in a bit, but firstly, we're going to carry on with what's good about this game. So, despite the fact that the MetaQuest headset, it's not perfect resolution, every edition has got significantly better, but we're still far from basic visual clarity, human visual clarity. And as such, you could expect things with tiny little pieces of wood to be sometimes incomprehensible, but that's not the case here. The manual is laid out very elegantly so that you can tell how many notches are in a certain piece of wood, and when leaning down towards the table and looking at them closely, you can easily determine, right, these 2 pieces look the same, but this one's got 4 notches and this one's got 2, and I'm looking for the one with 2. And so the problems that you might have thought from the visual design just aren't there. It's really well designed. Furthermore, the developers seem to have acknowledged that hand tracking isn't yet perfect. And so the leeway that the game gives you for placing the pieces on the model that you're constructing is quite wide. You can pick up a piece and place it the wrong way round, or maybe there's 4 pieces that are going on in a very close proximity and it will snap to the right one of those 4, rather than you having to try each one until finding where it fits in. So clearly the developers have acknowledged that hand tracking isn't perfect, the screens on a MetaQuest headset aren't yet perfect, and have balanced for these. They have made a game that takes into account the platform that is being developed for, which is fantastic. Furthermore, all of the puzzles, all 2 of them at present, but undoubtedly more to come, take place in a very scenic location based around the model that you're building. Japan is a little residential backstreet, very picturesque, and Venice is on a canal, exactly what you'd expect. And both of these scenes can be played either during the daytime or at nighttime. It's a very relaxing experience, just as model creating can be. And if you're the kind of person that's always thought, man, maybe I want to try this model creating, but you don't have the space for it, or maybe you're a bit clumsy and you're not good with glue or whatever, this is it. This is your answer. Puzzles of the World delivers exactly that experience virtually, meaning you don't have to have endless amounts of storage, you don't have to constantly be buying more kits, and you don't have to worry about making a mess. Now, those technical issues that I've mentioned before, we're gonna talk about them for a second here. Firstly, the game presents everything around a table. A table that, just like everything else in the game, can be moved around, in this case up and down, to suit your positioning. But a table is firstly pretty pointless, because the tiles and objects can be moved independently, you don't actually stick to it. In fact, when I was playing the game in the first instance, and I was moving the table, the objects and the buttons that let you do the settings and the options and things were so not fixed to the table that I was moving the table up and they were staying exactly where they were, and thus I couldn't see them. So much so that when I was doing the very first puzzle, the base for it was sitting underneath the table, and I was looking around going, well, I don't have that piece. What's going on? I was wondering if there was like, a secret to trying to find certain pieces or whatever else, but it's not. It was just hidden by the table. So I don't think the table is particularly important, and if it is, fair enough, but why is it brown? The wood pieces that you're using put together are a different shade of brown, but still, because of the way that the outline of them works, often you can be looking down and missing a piece. You'll be looking at rows and rows of pieces of the puzzle, maybe 10, 15 pieces, and the one that's right at the bottom will just blend in to the colour of the table. So maybe change that, or maybe just add options to change the colour of the table, or maybe even better, add an option to get rid of the table completely. That's just my 2 cents on that matter. The other issues that the game has is, as I say, the hand tracking's not perfect, but that's more of a technical issue to do with the hardware and the firmware than it is this game. And that content. Again, only 2 puzzles for launch, and I know it's an early access game, and I'm positive that there are more puzzles ready to come, but you would have thought that a game like this would have launched with at least maybe 5 or 6, and then add in a dozen more over the next coming months, whether or not they're paid content add-ons or if they're just included for people who have bought this early access game. That's fine. That's a decision developers need to make for themselves. But there needed to be more content on day one. There'll be a lot of people that go out and buy this game and sit there and do those 2 puzzles and never come back. 4 or 5 puzzles, maybe even 6 at launch would have made for a more convincing experience. There would be more than enough content for the day one players. And they would have come back later to do more. And by the time they finished that initial batch, more would become available and so on. And it keeps a constant chain going. But as it stands, with only 2 puzzles, I honestly can't suggest that you go and buy this game right now. Let's get that first batch of content. Come on, devs. Drop some more puzzles super quick. Let's get some out there. Because the game, Puzzles of the World, is a good game. But there's simply not enough of it. Dixotomia launched as an early access title late last year, and it didn't really receive much fuss when it originally arrived, but the developers have continued to update the game, and now we have the full release version of the game. But is it worth your time? Stick around and you'll find out. So Dixotomia is a pretty straightforward shooting game in VR. It's a corridor shooter. And what that basically means is that you'll be walking through linear routes, taking down bad guys. Pretty simple stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. The story is a lot of sci-fi schlock. You are some military dude that goes to a planet that's got lots of minerals and resources that some massive corporation has taken control of. And there's a bad guy that they use this resource for, like, making monsters and vampires and lots of weird things going on, a mix of sci-fi and horror. Although it's not really scary. There are like brain-dead enemies that come towards you and stuff like that. But take the horror element as like with a pinch of salt. And the story is delivered between in-game dialogue and cutscenes. And these cutscenes take place on on a 2D plane. They are 3D and animated, but they exist in a window in front of you. And in game, you have characters that talk to you and deliver other story elements. It's okay. It does the job. If you're into, like, Starship Troopers style sci-fi nonsense, then sure, Dixotomia's storyline is pretty interesting. But it's not particularly deep, and it's definitely not original. Which is much like the game itself. This is not an original concept. You are a military dude that gets infected and gives you special abilities, special powers, as you go through fighting robots and zombies and general bad guys. The game is a corridor shooter, as I say. It's a linear shooter. So last year we reviewed a game called Bionic Hunter: The Ancient Sword, and if that game wants to be Doom 2016 in VR, Dixotomia wants to be Doom 3 in VR. Except, of course, Doom 3 is already in VR if you've got a PlayStation VR. So you'll be walking through linear levels, taking down enemies as they come towards you. Sometimes they'll come from behind you as well, so you've got to be on your toes. And the combat, it's basic, but it's fun. You have a large variety of weaponry available to you, both guns and abilities, and you can use them in a variety of different ways. It's a bit awkward, the control system to begin with when you're selecting for your weapons, but you get used to it. And you can toggle options to make it more to your preference. So the combat being a large part of the game, I mean, it performs well. It's never going to blow your mind, but it does the job. And as such, Dixotomia, for anyone who likes corridor shooters, first-person shooters on console, will adapt to this VR take on it pretty easily. The game is very reminiscent of the Xbox 360 PS3 era first-person shooters. You know, the time when basically every game was a first-person shooter that had its unique hook, whether they be ability to control the ground or telekinesis or teleporting or whatever it may be. Every game seemed to have a unique hook of some kind, and Dixotomia does the same thing. You have a skill tree that allows you to unlock different abilities, such as telekinesis, such as a shield, and as you progress through the game, you'll collect certain items that give you resource points, allowing you to upgrade your skills. It's very simple, very formulaic stuff. We've seen it all before, but it performs well. It does the job. So there's no arguments here about using systems that people will be familiar with. It's a familiar kind of game using familiar kind of systems. And so if that genre, if that take on the first-person shooter is your bag, you're going to love Dixotomia. Now back to that story for a minute. There is lots and lots of unnecessary dialogue in the game. You'll encounter dudes, NPCs, that want to tell you their life story, and the game throws out options to ask different questions, and it makes out like there's a dialogue tree, but realistically, this has no impact on the game whatsoever. You can skip through these sequences, and there's no choices to make. It's just a case of selecting options to continue dialogue. So, I mean, just a few minutes into the game, I wanted to choose the one that got me to the end of this conversation as quickly as possible, because they're not really interesting. That said, the voice acting is actually of a really high standard. So maybe there is an argument for sitting around and listening to these conversations just for the quality of the voice acting. While you're doing so, however, you'll often find that the text boxes that appear alongside the speech kind of do so in a weird fashion. They overlay the action cut into the scene. And this happens quite a lot. There's quite a few menus that simply block your field of vision. Not necessarily at times when it's important, but it is annoying. We're in an immersive medium here. Why have I suddenly got loads of 2D boxes popping up, blocking my view of the environment that I'm in? And the interaction with those environments is limited. It's not a game where you're going to be going around picking up stuff and combining objects and finding new routes or anything like that. It is straightforward. You are here, the end is there, walk in the line and shoot any bad guys that come up. That's it. Pretty simple. That said, the difficulty is pretty tough, even on easy mode, as you'll see in the video clips that we've got in this video. As always, it's just the first couple of levels we're showing in this video because we don't want any spoilers. But you've got boss fights and turrets and all sorts of enemies coming at you. Enemies to charge towards you while others hang back and take cover. And it's pretty aggressive, even on easy mode, which is, you know, saying something. The game is not a short game because of how aggressive the enemies are. You're going to find that you're going to need to play around with the abilities that you've got for different situations. So thankfully, you can reset that skill tree. If you're finding that a specific ability that you've unlocked isn't really benefiting you, go ahead and reset and try something else. So Dixotomia's full launch has arrived, and there hasn't been much fanfare, just like with the early access version, and frankly, that's a bit unfair. Because while the game isn't doing anything new, it is an enjoyable corridor shooter.
Submit. I am Duncan. You will obey me. Obey or die. There, that was your last mistake. You just signed your death sentence. I'll tear you apart. I am Duncan. Obey. Nice. Shame I have to kill you.
So if that is your genre, if you love that Xbox 360, PS3 era where every other game was a first-person shooter with some unique twist, this is going to be right up your street. And the fact that the developers have continued to update the game and don't seem to be stopping anytime soon is very much welcome. So for a no-brainer, go and shoot the bad guys and then forget about it 5 minutes later. Dixotomia is a good time. Just don't expect anything innovative in here. I Am Security is one of the most popular games on the MetaQuest right now. It's a game in which you play as a security guard deciding the fate of your customers. Can they get into the nightclub? Can they go on board the plane? Only, it's not really that deep.
This is my cardio for the day. Time for desperate. This almost feels too easy.
I Am Security has you standing in a set spot and having people approach you, and you must decide whether they pass specific requirements. At the moment, there are 2 venues available, a nightclub and an airport. And it's very much a slapstick approach to this. If you're expecting something like Papers, Please, which was a game that became very famous about 10 years ago now, you're gonna be a bit wide of the mark. While the formula is similar, the actual intention is much more comedic. And frankly, I don't get it. So as you stand, whether it be at the airport or the nightclub, and supposedly there is a new update for Heaven and Hell coming soon, the patrons, the people that want to use your service, approach you one by one, and you must ensure that they have the right items. Whether that be they're not allowed pizza on this specific instance, or whether they must have headphones, wherever it may be. You'll have a grid showing you specific items, and they'll be red if they're not allowed, and green if they are. And you must then examine their person, and in the airport mode, also their suitcase, to make sure that they meet these requirements. Should they do so, give them permission and off they go. If they don't, take the items, maybe even send them away or even call the police. But realistically, none of this matters. There is no penalty for getting it completely wrong. You can arm someone to their teeth and give them all kinds of hatchets and whatever else and say, on you go, and there's no penalty. The only change that really happens is when you take stuff from people and then turn around and sell them to the weird guy in a booth behind you, you then earn money to unlock new items. And these customers that come towards you, you can dress them up in all kinds of fancy gear, give them all different kinds of equipment, as well as take stuff away from them. And that's really what I Am Security is. It is not a serious game. It is a game about taking these random character models and putting lots of goofy gear on them and having a laugh. And that's fine. That is super inventive and fun for 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes have passed, I'm wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I playing this game? There is no progression system beyond earning more money for more funny gadgets and stuff. There's no context for what you're doing, no win, no fail. It is simply, here's a character model in front of me, I'm going to make it look funny. And off you go. And that's strange. You would have thought, given the requirements that you have to dive into to ensure that these clients, these persons, are following specific guidelines, you would have thought that by completing your objectives, there is some kind of progression system. But there's not. The same studio that has created I Am Security has also created I Am Cat, which became really popular last year. And I Am Cat does this. It does have a system of objectives and progression-based gameplay that simply isn't here in I Am Security. And you know, I Am Security looks great in a 30-second TikTok video, but that 30-second TikTok video is pretty much all there is. Now, tell me if I'm getting this wrong. If there's something here that I haven't seen, then please do let me know in the comments below. I'm sure there's a lot of younger players out there that are going to think I'm wrong, because this game is stupid fun. And like I say, it is stupid fun for a few minutes. But there's nothing beyond that. And I don't understand why this game has become so popular. The developers have continuously updated it. If you look at the reviews on the MetaQuest store, there are people that are thanking the developers for how much effort they've put in, and other ones that are complaining that specific updates have not yet arrived. And that's fine, that's par for the course. But the game has 45,000 reviews, and most of them are 5 stars. So what am I missing? I think the core ingredient that I'm missing is that I'm not a 12-year-old kid. I Am Security is definitely a game that appeals to a younger crowd. It's a game that is designed for instant reward, instant satisfaction, comedy moments that you can share with your friends, and nothing beyond that. There is no depth to the game. So clearly, I am not the target market for this game. However, that being said, we recently reviewed Shop and Stuff, which you can see up here. And Shop and Stuff is for the same demographic, but has much more scope to it, much more appeal, much more inventive progression system. Win and fail. Well, not really fail states, but less rewarding states. And I Am Security has none of this. What's more, I'm not sure I could recommend that you buy I Am Security for your younger ones, simply because of the amount of adult toys that you encounter in this game. I'm not suggesting that a 12-year-old doesn't know what the phallic-shaped object in the suitcase is, but whether they should be confronted with it constantly, I'm not so certain. During the course of this game, in the first 5 minutes, I came across a dozen, and it's like, I'm not so sure this is appropriate. But the game is rated PEGI 12 in the UK, so maybe I'm just a prude. There are all sorts of other wacky objects. You can get flamethrowers and hats and headphones and necklaces and different outfits, dress people up. You can get tattoo removal gun to remove the face tattoos of some of the people. Some people carry dead rats in their pockets. I'm not sure really what's going on. But hey, it's funny the first time you encounter these things. It just gets really boring when you're continuously encountering the same thing, and there's no compulsion to do anything, to do what the game is asking you. You can either do it and the next one comes along, or you can steal everything, sell it, and buy more wacky things to put on the people. So ultimately, I Am Security is a game that is designed for a young audience with a really short attention span, and includes a lot of objects that I'm not quite certain are appropriate. So who's enjoying this game? Who out there is in that 45,000 people that have left this game a good review? Because honestly, I can't see it.
Great choice. I'm sure it'll help. Cool. I'm always up for trying something new. That was not necessary. You want a piece of me? Come at me, bro. Well, scrounging for pennies, are we? X-ray? Planning to snoop around, genius? Hope you know it took you long enough. I have places to be.
And this whole I Am series, if you're looking for a good game of this ilk, I Am Cat 100%. That is a game that is enjoyable. It has a decent progression system. There is depth there. I Am Security, there's nothing to it beyond that initial 5 minutes of laughing at a couple of guys coming up and giving them a funny grow their hair rapidly, or remove their tattoos, or play with their dead rat, or set them on fire. Once you've done this, it's just repeating the same thing ad nauseum. So yeah, maybe a few future updates will change my mind. There's a lot of talk about a DJing section, which I've not seen, so presumably that's still coming. But as it stands, I couldn't recommend I Am Security to anybody. Fighting games in VR vary drastically in quality. Motion controls are great for swinging your punches, but the lack of impact feedback kind of brings down a lot of these games. Street Gods from Soul Assembly launched last month and changes all of this. It takes fighting games to a brand new level in VR. So as I say, Street Gods is a fighting game. It's not like a one-on-one beat-em-up or anything like that. It is straight up a brawler, an arena-based brawler, essentially. And you play as a character called Val, a teenage girl from New York who likes graffitiing and spray painting and being a bit bad, who stumbles upon a hammer with the soul of Thor trapped inside. Yes, that Thor. The kind of Marvel Disney-esque side of Thor, but the original storyline, it's weird. But it works. And the game delivers such a pacing that realistically the whole story element to it, it's nice, but it's not really needed. What is important to note though is the super fun combat that's in this game. So the key element of the game is that hammer. Is the hammer that you wield for during combat. You can bash enemies with it, you can throw it at enemies, you can do all sorts of uppercuts and boomerang throws. And basically, by pulling the grip button on the controller, it will always return to your hand. So you can throw it to stun enemies, and then dash towards them and press that grip button, the hammer comes back, and you can beat them with it. Really cool stuff. You can imagine the kind of elaborate combos that you can get from doing this. And combining it with different skills, like I say, uppercut or boomerang throws, which stun group of enemies, and power blows, which are initiated after you've done a sequence of 3 hits to an enemy. You get some pretty cool attacks going on. That you can launch enemies into the air, you can pull them down off of high levels by using your whip ability, which is in your offhand, and then bash them with the hammer as they get close to you. It's really fun. It's really fun and really well done. It's a bit basic compared to some fighting games, but it's never not enjoyable. And the variety of enemies that are thrown at you is fantastic as well. Starts off really simply, as you can imagine, just dudes that walk towards you quite slowly, and then builds to enemies that like throw grenades at you, or enemies that set you on fire, and all different kinds of enemies that require all different kinds of tactics. So it's not just straightforward, I'm going to go bash everything in the arena. You do need to actually pay attention to which enemies you're in combat with at any time, and make sure that you are tactically using your abilities to take them out in the correct order. Or else you might die, and that will end your run. And the game, it starts off quite easy, but it does build in difficulty pretty quickly. So you'll need to make sure you're using your abilities and keeping your head on a swivel at all times to know where all the enemies are in each arena to make sure that you come out on top. Helping you along the way are numerous new abilities. There are only a few attack, like weapon types in the game. As I say, you've got the hammer, which is your main weapon, and then soon after you start, you get a whip, which can pull enemies towards you, although it's a bit tricky to execute at times. And then later in the game, you'll get a shield and another weapon, which we're not going to spoil right now. And all of these combine into a great mix-up of different attacks you can do, different abilities, different combos, and so on. But also, on each run, yes, the game does have a roguelike element, which is predictable for VR right now. On each run, you can gain new power-ups that adjust your character's abilities in some way. You can get usual like health increases or damage output increases or speed increases, but also things like a revive if you were to die in a specific arena, or boosted damage when your health is at max. Various other different abilities, the kind of stuff that if you're a roguelike fan, you'll probably be familiar with. And as for that roguelike element, the way that the game works is a bit different to what you might be assuming. At the hub of the game, there is what's called a taffle board, and this has a start and an end point, and sometimes a few blocks in between. And you must gather other tiles to place on the taffle board to determine your run, the duration of it, and so on. Each of these tiles that are placed on the board represents an arena, and you will start in an arena, defeat all the enemies, maybe explore around a little bit, trying to find some secrets or hidden bonuses, and then move on to the next one, and so on, and so on, and so on. So the amount of tiles that you place on the board determines how many arenas you will go through in order to complete that run. Should you die in a run, you're going to lose all your temporary power-ups. You never lose the weapons, but all those temporary power-ups you've gained, they're gone, and you need to start another run. Should you complete the run, you're going to find yourself in more difficult encounters. The game's story is delivered in twofold, essentially. The first is through 2D planes with voiceovers. Now, these 2D planes are exceptional. The amount of parallax that's in there and the comic book stylings of the game really impress. And the other element is through voiceover, through dialogue in the game. And honestly, at the start of the game, this is a bit tedious. The voice acting is fantastic, but the amount of lines and dialogue that's delivered to set up the game, really you just want to go and bash some heads, and they're talking at you far too long. Later in the game, it's much better paced, and you do actually have an interest in Val and Thor's adventure, some of the characters that you'll meet, and the adventure that you'll be partaking in. But all of this is wrapped up in some honestly immaculate set dressing. Street Gods, honestly, is one of the best games that I've played recently in terms of production values. I mean, it doesn't compare to things like Batman Arkham Shadow, but as far as indie development goes, everything here is so well designed. From the art style, to the animation, to the voiceover, to the soundtrack, to the delivery of the combat, the swiftness of the pace at which the game moves. It's fantastic. Honestly, Street Gods hasn't got that much attention since it launched, and that is a real shame, because the game, the presentation of it, is simply second to none. So while it's not going to appeal to people who don't enjoy fighting games, and if you're looking for something a bit more complex, this isn't that game. This is a simple, all-out brawling game with a little roguelike element. If you maybe imagine Deadpool with less guns and a little bit of a roguelike element, and you'll probably be pretty close to what Street Gods is.
I have no time for you.
They sent more. I think we almost juggled him up. Yeah, you wait for me.
Kill these last three. Only two left.
Okay, I'm done with you now.
So if that's your jam, I highly recommend Street Gods. It's only available for MetaQuest 3 and MetaQuest 3S, so if you're playing on MetaQuest 2, you're out of luck. But for those of you with a MetaQuest 3 or MetaQuest 3S who love fighting games, go and check this one out. It launched a bit too late for our recent Best Fighting Games in 2025 video, which you can see up the top right now, but maybe it's going to make it into a 2026 edition. We'll see later in the year. Pirates VR Jolly Roger is coming to MetaQuest. So if you like a bit of swashbuckling with your adventure, maybe this is a game that you need to check out. Stick around and we'll tell you if it's worth your time. Pirates VR Jolly Roger is actually an adaptation of a flat screen game, but not a straight port. This is a game that has been rebuilt from the ground up to suit VR. It's already available on Steam VR and for PSVR 2, but now is the turn of the MetaQuest headset. So we've dived in, we've taken a look at the game, and we're going to tell you exactly what we think in this review. To start off with, the world building of Pirates VR Jolly Roger is pretty good. The game sets the scene that you are on a quest to find a lost brother of another pirate. Quite why that pirate couldn't go and find his brother himself, I'm not really sure. Maybe he's a bit of a coward. And during this opening sequence, the mission that he gives you comes accompanied with a map. And this map essentially acts as your level select. You will plot a chart from A to B with various different X's showing what each of the stages that you have completed are and which part of the game you are at. It's a simple system allowing you to go back and replay early levels if you really want, but the game isn't really built that way. It is a linear experience. You are supposed to take the levels one by one and progress your way through the story. And there's actually several levels right at the start of the game that are purely training levels. The game breaks down all the different types of activities that you will engage in into small sections for you to take one by one. Beginning with traversal and then swimming underwater and then combat and so on, until you understand all of the basic mechanics in the game. Now, during these early training levels, the the way in which the game holds your hand and delivers to you your objectives is quite erratic. You will find at sometimes that the game is leading you so hard that you're not actually being inventive or doing anything yourself. You're just following along a pre-charted line. And other times, the parrot guide that you have will just completely disappear and leave you wondering what the hell you're supposed to be doing, walking around these environments for 15, 20 minutes just to try and find an object that you haven't yet interacted with. And sadly, a lot of the game is like this. There are moments in which you feel like you're building to a big epic encounter of some kind, and instead it kind of just fizzles out. And I'm not sure if this is because of the design of the original game, I haven't played the flat screen version of this, or whether it's just a miscalculation on the developer's part. It does feel, at regular occurrences, like the game could have done with more player testing. Like, the expectations of the developers differ to what my expectation as the player would be. The game is incredibly colourful in what it does deliver, though. When you do find that everything clicks into place, it is a thoroughly enjoyable adventure. You will be searching through caves and fighting skeletons and everything that you can possibly imagine of being a pirate, except for, like, adventuring on the high seas. And the game is littered with all kinds of collectible objects and treasure that you can find and so on that you can then spend to unlock optional objectives. And these are things like speedruns and so on. They're not intrinsic to the story or the progression through the game, but they are a little side amusement that you can engage with should you choose to do so. In terms of engaging with the world, there are a few issues. They're not massive, but you probably should be aware of them. For example, when opening treasure chests, some of them can be opened with one hand, some of them you actually have to bend right down to eye level and use both hands to open. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of indication as to which the specific treasure chest you're opening will be. Sometimes an identical treasure chest will have two different requirements for opening it. And I'm not sure if this is intentional or if this is just some sort of small error. But it's something that I encountered that was a bit weird. And there are many aspects like this. There was a point in the very early start of the game where I had to get a pickaxe to hack open a treasure chest. And the pickaxe just would not connect with the padlock. I had to restart the game twice, and then suddenly it started working. And I'm not sure if that was an issue with me and the way I was trying to do it, or if that's a problem with the game that needs to be looked at. The game does have all the usual climbing mechanics that you'll be familiar with VR adventure games, and also zip lines, which sometimes can make you feel a bit not great, but here they work perfectly fine. One issue I did encounter, though, is the fall distance that you can take before dying is tiny. So while there's many obstacles that require you to jump at specific heights and whatever else, and those I tackled super fine, when I decided to walk off a ledge just to explore what was down below, instant death. And that's not a great feeling when it looks like it's a ledge you can just walk off. Also, it is worth pointing out that the combat in this game is quite shallow. It's certainly not going to live up to a game that has been built around the combat design. It is simply a case of swipe and an enemy falls over. You don't really have to engage that much with the enemies. There's not any dexterity challenges or anything like that. It's a game that is made to take you as the player on a linear adventure from A to B without really anything taxing you on the way. There's no complicated puzzles and no massive enemy onslaughts to deal with. It's a simple, pleasant adventure that you can take at your own pace. And while you're doing so, make sure you pay attention to some of the backdrops in this game, because even though we're playing on a meta quest here, they do look fantastic. It feels quite obvious that a lot of attention has been paid to the mountains drawn in the distance in the early levels, because they look stunning. And while the in-game graphics, the stuff that you can actually get up close to, is pretty fair and standard stuff for a meta quest headset, those distances, the draw distance that the game has and the objects that appear in the distance, they are top tier for the MetaQuest headset. So ultimately, what you're going to find in Pirates VR Jolly Roger is a game that it has issues, but it is an enjoyable adventure. If you're a fan of pirates and everything that thematic offers, then go ahead and check out Pirates VR Jolly Roger. You're bound to have a good time, as long as you can accept that there are some issues along the way. However, if you're more of someone who likes an adventure game and doesn't really care about the pirate aesthetic, there are better adventure games on the MetaQuest.